So what's good, people? Welcome back to the class. This is our fourth lesson, and today we'll be discussing what a songwriter is. We have 7 slides to go through, and they'll all be based around these 3 points. 1 being the occupation, 2, the types of writers, and 3, the alternate paths that a songwriter can take in the industry or just throughout their career. Let's get started. A songwriter's occupation can be summed up with these 2 points. 1, they create musical compositions and license them for use in audio and audiovisual recordings and live performances. And 2, they ghostwrite for recording artists and producers. Let's go back to point 1 for a second. Unlike recording artists, songwriters don't create sound recordings. Instead, they license or authorize recording artists the right to use their compositions and distribute them. Here's an example. Let's say you and I are about to collab on a song, and I'm a recording artist who raps and sings, but I'm having a little bit of trouble with the hook. I may hire you to come and write a part of the hook for me, or maybe you'll just allow me to use a hook that you already have that can work for my song. Now, granted the fact that I'm singing and rapping, I wouldn't necessarily need you to perform on the song. All I would need is your authorization for me to use your lyrics on my song. On the business side, you'd have to come back with the contract that states exactly what you're allowing me to use, and we'd have to agree upon the percentage of publishing royalties that you would be entitled to. Now, that also goes for audiovisual recordings and live performances. If I wanted to take that song to a sync agency and get it placed on a film, a commercial, or even a TV show, I, as well as the TV or film producer, would need to get your clearance to sync your composition to motion picture. And the same goes for live performances. If I were to go perform that song live, I would need your clearance to do so. The second part of their occupation is that they ghostwrite for recording artists and producers. There are instances where songwriters are contracted to write lyrics or produce another part of the composition, such as the beat, but they'll go uncredited for their work, and they usually don't receive any royalties from the distribution of the song or the composition or whatever it is that they were creating. Ghostwriting is a form of songwriting. Nonetheless, there's a subtle nuance in there. So with point 1, the songwriter keeps their publishing rights and is allowing or licensing the artist or entity to use the composition, and they'll typically be credited and paid royalties for their work. Whereas in point 2, the songwriter being a ghostwriter, they'll go uncredited for the work, and in most instances, they'll forfeit their publishing rights. But there are other instances where they retain at least a small portion of the rights to their composition. Let's go a bit further in depth with this concept here. You got your boy Jersey Drake to the left and Quentin Miller, aka Q, to the right. Now, if you're a fan of hip hop or pop culture, then you know just how controversial these two have been for the last decade. We all know that Drake is an international rap and pop star from Canada, and his name and accolades speak for themselves. But it wasn't until 2015 that the world became aware of Quentin Miller, as well as his natural talent for rap and R&B hooks and overall songwriting capabilities. In that same year, Meek Mill tweeted that Drake has a ghostwriter and accused Drake of not writing the lyrics for their hit song Rico, and he even went as far to say that Quentin Miller wrote the album or mixtape If You're Reading This, It's Too Late, which was released by Drake. Now, what Meek Mill said is only half true. Quentin Miller did write for Drake, but he never ghostwrote any of Drake's music. In fact, Quentin Miller had a deal with a music publisher in Atlanta, Georgia. Quentin Miller's publishing team connected him with Drake. They sent reference tracks of songs back and forth to one another and both critiqued each other's work. Once Drake finally got the clearance to use his lyrics or composition for the mixtape, as well as other works, he contacted Quentin Miller's publishing team. He paid Quentin Miller's publishing fees and then properly credited him for the work on his albums, as well as the other songs they had did together. Now, the practice of contracting songwriters to finish sound recordings or songs is very common in the industry. This happens for recording artists in all genres, including hip-hop and rap. In fact, if you were to look into the album notes, also known as the credit lines for any of your favorite albums or songs, you would probably find a list of songwriters, whether it have been the producer who contributed to the composition and is now listed as a songwriter, or somebody who contributed lyrics or a melodic or harmonic idea for the song. It's a very standard and very common practice. But on the other hand, as we stated about ghostwriters, if somebody were to ghostwrite, they wouldn't receive any credit whatsoever, and they may only be paid for the initial work that they've done and wouldn't receive any royalties afterwards. Now, to make this even more of a teachable moment, Quentin Miller's aspirations as a musician was largely centered around his career as a songwriter. In more recent years, Quentin Miller has expressed his frustration as a songwriter in the industry, as well as some of the problems he's encountered. He's discussed not being properly credited for his work, his music publishers running off with the money that Drake or other artists have sent over to him for the use of his lyrics, as well as the backlash he's received from vocalizing his frustrations. If you are a songwriter or you plan on doing any songwriting, all of your financial agreements should be thoroughly documented in a contract before you authorize anybody the right to use your music. In Quentin Miller's case, several artists have released his music without his authorization and without a contractual agreement. And as stated by Quentin Miller, Drake followed the proper protocols by paying Quentin Miller for the use of his work. However, his publisher ran off with his check. As you progress through your career as a songwriter, be very careful should you choose to sign a publishing deal. I'll leave a link in the bio so you can watch the interview where he talks about his experiences in the music business. Now, unfortunately, he's just one of many people who've encountered these problems. When you're conducting business, it's inevitable that at some point you will have a legal or financial issue with another entity or another person. This is why it is imperative that you have an attorney. Let's move on. There are several types of writers. Point number one, you have the lyricist who writes or develops the ideas for the lyrics of a song. You have the composer who writes or develops the ideas for the melodic, harmonic, and rhythmic elements of the song. This could be a producer. Then you have the singer-songwriter. They write and record their own music. The singer-songwriter can even be classified as a recording artist. Nonetheless, the difference is that they are writing the composition for the records that they are performing as well. Let's take a look at a couple examples of what a lyricist, composer, and singer-songwriter is. First up, we have Max Martin. He is a Swedish songwriter who has an amazing track record. Here's some of his highlights. He has 25 #1 Billboard hits. He's worked with the Backstreet Boys, Taylor Swift, The Weeknd, Katy Perry, and more. I mean, the fact that he works with the Backstreet Boys says enough. I mean, if you go back to the 90s, then you know how long he's been around. And then third, he's been awarded 5 Grammys for his work. Max Martin does produce. However, he is very well known for writing lyrics for other artists. A little fun fact at the bottom, he doesn't sing professionally. We said to be a songwriter, you don't actually have to perform the music. Next up, we have Zaytoven, an Atlanta-based super producer who's had an amazing career in the industry as well. Number one, he is amongst the earliest pioneers of trap music. He's produced for Gucci Mane, Future, Drake, Usher, Young Scooter, the Migos, and more. And he's even been awarded a Grammy for his work. Now, Zaytoven is a composer. He doesn't write lyrics at all, nor does he sing or rap. He just produces beats for artists. Another little fun fact, all of his musical abilities were developed while growing up in church. Now, in other instances, a composer may even be somebody who produces for film. For example, there's James Newton Howard. He's produced 40-plus albums and over 100-plus films. He's been composing for film since the 1980s. One of his earliest ones was 8 Million Ways to Die, Everybody's All American, and then his other works like Space Jam, I Am Legend, Batman Begins, The Hunger Games 1 and 2, etc. Next, we have Party Next Door, also known as P&D. He has over 100 songwriting credits and wrote and produced 2 gold-certified albums. He's worked with Drake, Beyonce, DJ Khaled, Rihanna, and more, and he too has been awarded a Grammy for his work. Now, Party Next Door is a singer-songwriter. In fact, those 2 gold albums that we mentioned were actually his own albums. As a songwriter, it is also possible to have a career as a recording artist. In that instance, you would just be referred to as a singer-songwriter. A quick little fun fact, he is the pioneer of trap-infused R&B music. Now, as you might be able to tell, the career path of a songwriter isn't linear. There's a lot of options and a lot of opportunities to make money. Now, taking a look here at this list, most of the career options for songwriters would have something to do with synchronization licensing. Like number 1, you have jingles, which are short songs for commercials and ads. Think about the theme song for McDonald's, which was actually written by Pusha T and his brother. You have video games. Every video game has music in it. You have film composers, which are people who write scores for movies. You have theater directors. They write and direct music for plays and live performances. And last but not least, children's songwriters. They usually write songs for kids' TV, film, and stories. Now, if you were interested in writing jingles, music for video games, or film composition, your best bet would be to go through a music library or a synchronization library. A sync library is like a musical directory, and they specialize in connecting songwriters with TV and film producers, as well as video game developers. However, if you were looking to be a theater director or a children's songwriter, your best bet would be to use platforms like LinkedIn or companies such as Music Gateway. Now, that is all for today's lesson. And that concludes class 4. If you have any questions about today's class, leave them in the comment section. Also, if you have any information that you would like to share, please do so and leave it in the comment section as well. This is a community. We are here to help each other learn and grow. For now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next class.